All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Truetalks podcast. This is episode 103. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jaylin Man, and I'm with
Darian Pan.
and today we have a very special guest, Professor Chatterjee. Woo! And so, just as a little brief intro that I kind of prepared for myself, Professor Chatterjee is a SUNY Binghamton professor who won many different awards in teaching, and especially for the area of business professors. And his research focuses on some of the fascinating areas of marketing, where a lot of people make seemingly irrational decisions, specifically consumers. And he is a top scholar who posted on a lot of different top journals and post a lot on Google Scholar as well. That's a little bit of an intro, but for Professor Chatterjee, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jaylin, for those kind words. Yes, I do a lot of research in decision making and how people behave. But mostly, if you want to understand what I do, it's all about how consumers make decisions that often don't make sense. That's this notion of irrationality. And I can give you an example. Of course, it's not my example, but it's a very well-known example in our domain, and it's called the bat and ball problem. And you may have actually, growing up, come across this little snippet. It goes like this. A bat and a ball costs $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? It's like a riddle, right? And people are thinking, $1.10. Sure, the ball costs 10 cents and the bat costs $1. And then, when you tell them, but hey, that doesn't make sense, right? Because in that case, if the bat costs $1 and the ball costs 10 cents, then the bat is 90 cents more than the ball. All right, it's not $1 more than the ball. And people say, no, that can't be right. Okay, and so what gives? What gives? Sometimes our instincts are so strong that we stick to it, and that gives root to all sorts of irrationalities, biases, and things like that. So I try to look at things that are out of the ordinary and sort of what we call descriptive research. Okay, so it's not so much as to why don't people give the right answer. Like, see, when we are taught math, statistics, we always think there's a right answer, right? Okay, the bat is $1.05 and the ball is 5 cents. You subtract the two and that's it. You get $1. Well, I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is, why do people keep insisting the bat costs $1 and the ball costs 10 cents? Are they stupid? That's a very easy thing to say, but no. So the roots of these so-called irrationalities. So in a brief sense, that's my research. How do these illogical decisions arrive? And then ultimately, what can we do to de-bias the consumers, get them on the right track, train them? Okay, and sometimes it's easier said than done. Particularly when it's not math problems. Okay.
Definitely. Love that classic riddle. I remember watching a YouTube video and it popped up on my feed one time. and that's really fascinating as well. You post a lot of great questions. I guess, what are the answers to that? Do you know why some people insist on the ball being 10 cents and the bat being $1? Is the explanation people are stupid, or is there a deeper level to that?
No. In my research, I cannot afford to call my consumers stupid. That's number one. Just as in a classroom, when I go to teach students, some are very bright and get the answer instantly, and some spend days and yet don't get the answers. Are the second group stupid? Some people may be inclined to say so, but no, they approach problem solving in different ways. So that's the root. That's the root of. So if you want to ask yourself why this happens, you have to ask yourself, how do people solve problems? Okay. And briefly, do they solve through instincts or they solve through reasons? Okay. When you reason things out, what's the big difference between the two? It's time consuming. If you want to reason something out, it takes time. It takes effort. And yes, I admit it may take intelligence if it's a math problem or a problem in statistic. However, if you rely on instincts, what happens is that a first answer comes to mind that makes sense to you. And you don't want to get rid of that. So you're kind of boxed into that $1 answer because it makes sense to you. $1.10, how nicely they separate. Okay. But how do you go and then what can we do to compel you to do the math? Listen, you will do the math if you are convinced that you got the wrong answer, right?
Right. Yeah.
When you think you got the right answer, why bother?
Yeah.
That's the hard part. So the answer to your question is typically how people make decisions, whether they are more instinct based, quick, effortless decisions, or they are more reasons based. Okay, and it might be worthwhile for as a professor when I get into a class in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to teach freshman statistics. Oh my goodness, that's the most difficult class to teach. To entering freshmen, okay, to entering freshmen, and that's where you can sort of amplify this message. Okay, even if you get what seems to you the right answer, just pause and think a little bit. Is the instructor trying to trick you? That's how I put it. It's always good to think. Okay, so that's a very, very long-winded answer to a very simple question.
No, I like the answer to your question. I think a lot of the times when we're making purchases, it could be instinct, and then some of the time also it could also be that we're thinking too deeply, and then these little price changes actually matter a lot more to us than what it actually is. And some examples could be like, going to a grocery store and noticing how something like an apple went up by like 50 cents versus like how a concert ticket, went up by like $50. But, you're so intrigued by the concert ticket, so you don't really realize the impact of that $50. So do you feel that most consumers, it's instinct based, or do you think that it's just a mix of both and it depends on what scenario it really is?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. When particularly Jaylin, you talked about a marketing concept, and this is where we come into a slightly muddy waters. What do marketers want you to be? See?
Instinct driven.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Would marketers like you to be more reasons based? Like when you see a great price, you should say, "Whoa, that's a great price! 50% off. That's great." And you don't think of say, "Ooh, if it's 50% off, well, just let me check. Is it close to expiration, or?" Maybe it's 50% off. That 50% off sounds very nice, but did they actually, without us noticing, increase the base price? You see, 50% off $5 versus 50% off $1. It makes a huge difference, doesn't it? And so, I did some research, which is more psychology based, but it's very similar to instinct versus reason. And what they call is that a peripheral versus central. So what is peripheral? Peripheral is on the out, right? Something that is peripheral to us, like a peripheral vision at the corner of my eyes. Central is something right in front of you. Okay, and so the phrases they coined was peripheral versus central processing. Some people are peripheral processors, so they look at the information and they look at 50% off, but they don't look at the base price. See?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what marketers want to do. So what do? They splash 50% off sales. Do they ever tell you it's a $10 off sale or it's a $50 off sale? It's always the percentage, because percentage can hide the base number. See?
Mm-hmm.
And so peripheral folks who are peripheral processors of information, they often fall into that trap, that decision trap. Folks who are more central processors will say, hey, just like reason, wait a minute. Let's see what the base price base price is. So there's a long history of this. It's a long history of this. Go ahead.
Absolutely. You touched on a lot of great points. And the first one being sort of the antidote to missing these psychological biases is being more reasons based. And then also mental accounting, which is the concept of how we mentally compartmentalize our money. Say, like, why are we frugal with groceries, but splurge on like a last minute flight?
Yeah,
Are there any
go
Are
ahead.
there any other mind traps that you say are pretty common within consumers that maybe even someone like yourself that studies this for a career fall into every day?
That's a good question. You see, because I study decision making, particularly in everyday, most of the time in everyday purchase situations, it makes me a very bad consumer because I question everything. Okay, you know, I question everything. You mentioned something very interesting about mental. About mental accounting. And typically, what mental accounting is, it's like, it's people, as if when they enter into a purchase decision, they make an account of it. What are the costs, and what are the benefits? And then what they try to do is to say, okay, do the costs match the benefits? And if that's okay, they make a decision. Perfect. All right. What could be wrong? Perfectly rational way of making decisions. But then let me give you an example. Okay. And suppose you go out and you see a pair of shoes that you love. Okay, that's of the latest style, and you love it. Okay, and as you're about to buy that pair, the store person tells you, but just be very careful. This is the last item on our. This is the last item in store, and you can't return it. Okay, and so make sure that this is the right pair for you, and so you wear it. It looks beautiful, and stylish, handsome, whatever you may want to call it, and you bring it home. Now that's where the problem begins. Once you bring it home, you walk around and your feet hurt very much. Okay, you can't return it. You know that. So that's not the anomaly. That's not the puzzle. The puzzle is you can't wear it. You can't return it. So why don't you throw it away or donate it to charity? That people never do. Why? Why? They do. I mean, I'm giving you the spoiler already. They do, but they do it after 6 months to a year. Okay, they don't do it right away. And you mentioned mental accounting. So think about it. What happens to the mental accounts? You bought it. So the cost side is taken care of, right? But you haven't got any benefits. So your account is what we call in the red. And people hate to close accounts in the red. And so they keep the shoes. Maybe they try wearing it despite the pain once or twice. And then they wait for the pain or the pain of that payment, whatever you paid, $100, $200, $500. They wait for that payment, the pain of that payment, because you don't get any benefits. So it's painful. They wait for the pain to depreciate, using an accounting term, to depreciate. And once it does that. So again, coming back to my research, it's not what is logical and what is illogical, but why do people behave in illogical ways? Okay, and that's in a sense the story of my research, trying to make sense of irrationality, and it makes perfect sense if you ask me. It makes perfect sense if you ask me. But your example of mental accounting, I mean, just brought this example to my mind because I love it and I use it in my teaching. Yeah, I use it in my teaching all the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that personal scenario of buying some shoes just because it had a cool brand name where it was on sale, like a 50% slash off, but ended out to be not really what you wanted. And I think that touches on the other part of your research, which is loss aversion,
Yes.
where we might view something that's positive the same way as twice the negative. So why is it that we react so differently to, say, a price change of $5 versus a loss of $5?
That's exactly right. So loss aversion is generally what loss aversion says is that losses loom larger than equivalent gains. So your second part is absolutely right. Why is a $5 loss? Okay, why does it hurt more than a $5 gain pleases? All right, and to give you a very very simple example, what loss aversion would predict is that, say, you opened your wallet and you found you're missing $5. That's a straight loss. All right, and then you walk down the street, you see a $5 bill lying in front of you. You pick it up. There's nobody around. You don't know where it came from. You're a conscientious person. You go to the police station. I mean, I wonder who would go $5, walk $5, walk to the police station for $5. But let's imagine you say, so the police is finders keepers. It's the law of this county. You found it. There's no one claiming it. It's yours. Oh, good. You're happy. But what loss aversion says is that the amount of happiness, can it cancel the amount of unhappiness that you felt when you found that you had lost $5? And loss aversion essentially says that it doesn't. Losses, for whatever reasons, they loom larger. Okay, they displease more than the same gain pleases, and it's a huge arena in our decision making context. And so that's a tough one. That's a tough one, my friend. Ultimately, what is it about losses? What is it about losses that make them more painful relative to how gains please? And listen, and there are mathematical models about this. There are graphical models. You have, the loss function is steeper than the gain function, but that's merely, giving a mathematical solution to an otherwise very interesting puzzle. Why? What's the psychological reason behind why bad things loom larger or hurt more than good things please? And if you ever can find out the answer to the problem, to that question,
Yeah. No, that question is something that, once you brought up, like I'm really thinking about it. And that, what you brought up about loss aversion, right?
Loss aversion. No easy answer.
You're right. I feel like that really resonates with my life as well, specifically in one area, talking about stocks. Whenever, sometimes there's a green day, sometimes there's a red day. Red days, even if the red day is like just like I'm down by a little bit, like a couple hundred, it's like it affects me a lot more than like even if I was like up a lot of money, right? So like I really noticed that like this scenario where it's either I'm up or down, or I really get affected by that. Do you feel like there's any areas in your life that that you get affected by that as well?
Oh my goodness! You get affected by ups and downs, and I too get affected by ups and downs for very different reasons. You are starting out, perhaps you don't earn as much money as you would like, and so every dollar is important to you, right? And you invest it, and you would like to only see two ups and see downs. I am heading close to retirement, and so I have to worry about my nest egg. Okay, so it's really it's the same thing. So, and the second question that you raised, Jaylin, is really, really important. You've got to train yourself, okay? You've got to train yourself, and so what do we do is increase a temporal horizon, okay? And so pretty much what this is that, if you look at a lot of fluctuations in the short term, but if you look at it, say, daily, all right, there's a lot of fluctuations. But what about weekly? All right, or what about monthly? What about yearly? Okay, so that volatility goes down. So it talks about investment horizons. So particularly for you, just setting out, you can afford to set a bigger investment horizon, and so you can say, you know what? Okay, I think I made a good decision. I'll wait 1 year before I see what I'm doing, how my stock is performing at the end of the year, not at the end of the next day. All right, and so kind of train yourself, to improve or at least enhance your horizon, your temporal horizon. And if time permits, later on I can tell you a story about cab drivers and how this affects cab drivers, not the stock market, but how this notion of loss aversion affects the driving habits of cab drivers. And that's a real field study, very, very famous field study in our area. So, but we'll talk about it later if time permits.
Yeah, you definitely touched on another interesting bias, which is people tend to see short-term horizons and short-term gains a lot more than thinking in the long term.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool how you also touched on the huge mathematical models behind trying to quantify the qualitative, which is why does it hurt more when you're in the red? And do want to pivot into something a bit more quantitative, I feel like, which is another part of your research, which is what makes a movie a good movie. Because I know that context plays a big part of it, and I don't want to keep it open-ended, but what separates movie flop to a blockbuster?
Yeah, that's right. There are some great co-authors that I worked with on the movies paper that I wrote. But again, you see, when I first started the movies paper, my fundamental question was very simple. Do positive reviews help movies more than negative reviews hurt movies? Classic loss aversion. It was classic loss aversion, and indeed, what we found was that is absolutely true. Negative reviews hurt movies more than positive reviews help movies. Okay, but later on, the point that you you are talking about is what makes for good and bad movies in terms of box office. Okay, And our research was on sequels. Okay. Why do some sequels do well while others fare miserably? And therein, actually, our behavioral studies led to us developing a semi-sort of, because you see, I'm not a math person, okay? I pretend that I know numbers, but I don't actually know anything about numbers or much about numbers. And what we found, and those, and again, focusing not on new movies, focusing on sequels, okay? And what we found was that really, when you have a first movie that is a huge hit, otherwise, unless your parent movie is a huge hit, you won't make a sequel, right? That's taken for granted. When you make the first sequel, don't change. Okay? Okay? Because people are accustomed to that good feeling that initial movie generated for them. And then they want to relive that good feeling. So you start by essentially mimicking, copying the original. Sequel 1, sequel 2, okay? And then what happens? Boredom, right? When you see or eat the same thing again and again and again, even if you like it very much the first time, over a period of time, you start getting bored, right? It's a universal. It's a universal phenomenon. Same thing with sequels. Around, and I think our math model told us that around the third try, so around the third means the original movie, the first sequel, the second sequel. So around the second and the third sequel, that's where the data, the limited data that we had. And the limited data that we had was on box office. And so it's told us is that around that second or third sequel, you start making gradual changes, now bring in a new lead actor. Now maybe change the plot line. Okay. And that sort of lengthens the shelf life of that franchise. Okay, and so that's the reason. And then later on, although our data didn't permit us to go all the way, to 6th, 7th, 8th sequels, because we didn't have data that. But what I'm noticing these days is that for a franchise that is very deep, that have a lot of remakes, nostalgia often seeks in. So you start bringing the old actors back when you make the 8th sequel or the 9th sequel. Okay, that's nostalgia, and that nostalgia is you're targeting the folks who first saw that movie maybe 10 years ago. All right, and they want to relive that experience again. So it's a complicated problem with, I believe, it's some common sense solutions, but it's lovely to work on. Okay, and that's the thing. I've been blessed in the sense that I come to work, and it's not that, oh shit, I got to go to work today, but it's more like, wow. What can I do today? Okay, what can I do today? What can I do today? What are some new interesting papers that I can read that can give me some ideas of where to look for next and so on.
Right. Yeah, I think like that's a goal. That's a dream, to be passionate, waking up every day, excited about doing what we love and doing work that we're very passionate about. But I love what you were touching base upon on the movies and the sequels, and I think I see a lot of that through like Mission Impossible or Maverick having that nostalgic factor. I know, like for my parents, when we were watching that movie, it kind of brought them back all the way to the original one. But I thought that was really interesting that you brought up. And then
exactly right. That's true. Yeah. It's continuity. And then nostalgia, and then it's a boredom. A lot of these these features or factors work in, but they're very specific to the segments that you're talking about. You're talking about parents versus you, and
Right.
so that's important. But it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah. And also Marvel as well. They've been making movies for a long time now, and they're still very successful. And yeah, especially Spider-Man. The No Way Home, Far From Home.
In the old
all
days,
those.
I used to be a huge movie buff, and then I don't know what happened. Or maybe they just stopped making good movies. I don't know. Maybe I don't like these animation movies much, and so I haven't watched too many movies recently, which is very surprising given that I do research on movies.
Yeah. I guess none of them are really following what your research is implying. They have to apply more of that to their own movie creations.
But do you feel like there's
Go back. Let me go back. Instincts. A producer who is making the movie, that the producer or the director is instinctively, I think this will work, and so I understand my audience. Who knows? But go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, all good. But I was just gonna ask, do you think there's a limit to how many remakes a production company can make their movie before, they lose all interest?
Again, I think the topic of the title of our paper, I keep forgetting, balancing nostalgia with novelty. Not really. If it's novel enough. If it's novel enough, see what happens in franchise movies is that you have the name recognition. Mission Impossible, Spider-Man, Maverick. There's a huge name recognition there. You don't want to get rid of that, okay? But at the same time, you don't want to bore the consumers with the same old, and then you have to be a little bit careful because there's a new group, a younger group who are now moviegoers, and they might not like to see what their parents loved 10 years ago. So, hey,
right, yeah.
so as long as you keep the balance, okay, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Okay, it's much easier to sell something that people are aware of, brand recognition that we call it. Okay, so people know the Mission Impossible brand, they know the Spider-Man brand. Okay, it's just don't bore them. That's all. That's all.
Definitely. You see, I think a huge trend in Hollywood these days is that they're running out of ideas, so they turn to old ones and do live action remakes. And maybe it's not novel enough because with those recent Disney movies, they haven't been performing as well as, say, Sony Animations is with the release of K-pop Demon Hunters or
that takes me out of I'm not very familiar with the Disney movies as such, but tastes change. Certainly when you were growing up versus consider when your parents were growing up, okay, the environment was different. So in that sense, I'm not surprised that people, the new generation particularly, are not so attuned to the Disney movies anyway. But that doesn't stop them from trying. So every year you probably see them have hundreds of remakes. Okay, and so the movie making is a very, very difficult business.
Absolutely,
it's a very, very difficult business. Yeah,
100%. And there's a lot of trickery in achieving that balance with sequels. And you touched upon earlier how brand name makes a huge impact, whether it's a cool name like Mission Impossible or Spider-Man.
Yeah.
More of a fun and opinionated question.
Yeah.
Is there a brand name just by the way it sounds that you secretly love or hate?
To tell you the truth, right on the top of my mind, I cannot think of anything right now that I either love I love a lot and purely because of its name or I hate a lot because I guess over time I've become a reasons-based person. Yuki. The people who are drawn in by the names Brandon, remember, they are peripheral processors, they're system one thinkers. Okay, and so the brand name is okay. It sounds like a cool brand. Okay, oh my God, that's such a cool brand, and so they make that inference. Oh, it must be a good quality brand. See, I don't. Okay, so I need to test that. And I understand that was a very disappointing answer, but really, I really, can't think of a brand that I love very much or I hate very much.
I think that's a very real answer though, because when you're doing research, a lot of it comes down to the numbers. So you're seeing so much, it's
Yeah, and I think
you have a different perspective on it.
right, and I think it's good that you don't. So you reduce as much bias from your mind as possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But again, the biases are something we live with. Okay, biases are something we live with. As long as you acknowledge that it's a bias. If you acknowledge that it's a bias on my part, it's how you treat people, right? It's essential. It's how you treat people. There are people you take an instinctive dislike to. Okay, and I can talk about research that has to do with teaching, and this is something that this might interest you. And it turns out that when an instructor walks into the classroom on day one, okay, D1, and then the students and does the class and go away, and the students read that instruction just on one day. Read that instructor on one day. And then the instructor teaches the class for the entire semester. And then at the end of the semester, you have the instructor evaluations. And see, the point is that when they looked at the correlation between how students rated the instructor on the day one versus how they rated the instructor on the last day of class, the correlation was upwards of 90%. So what is this saying? What this is saying is that when that instructor walked into the classroom on day one, people formed an instinctive opinion of that instructor. And for the remainder of the semester, they looked for confirming evidence. Okay, if they thought the instructor was very bad on day one, just didn't seem right to me, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, etc., they just focused on the negatives.
Interesting.
Whereas those who found on week 1 or on day 1 found the instructor to be engaging, positive, and their positive views, week 2, week 3, week 4, all the way to week 14, week 15, they looked for evidence that just confirmed their initial instincts about the professor. It's there. It's there in whatever we do. It also tells us that as a teacher, all right,
Right.
and trust me, I know this.
Yeah.
Day 1 is the most important day of my semester.
Yeah, I can imagine you're like on your top attitude first day walking into the lecture, and making sure that you have the best impression for your students, so that on the Rate My Professor, they're giving very good reviews. But I actually do realize that, especially at Binghamton, a lot of the students really rely on Rate My Professor when choosing their classes and choosing their professors. And based on the Rate My Professors, if there's a lot of negative reviews on a professor, they tend to already have these negative emotions associated with that professor, and they're always looking for things to just prove like what the reviews are saying. So I find that really interesting that you bring it up. But yeah.
And particularly, see, I've been teaching for 35 years, and so it doesn't bother me anymore. I've achieved whatever little there is to achieve. I worry about the junior faculty. I worry about the faculty who are just setting out, and it's demotivating for them. It's really demotivating for them. So how do we keep them? See, you're focusing on the student side, and I'm focusing on the supply side, the professors in the classroom. And so how do we keep them motivated? and that's a very very difficult thing to accomplish. It's a very, very difficult thing to. You've hit upon a huge problem, and that's always what I tell the young instructors to do, is to just have periodic conversations with the students. Just have periodic. Don't wait for the last day. Don't wait for the last day. Don't wait for the last day. Okay.
Yeah,
And get them to see the human side of you.
Of course. Yeah. I love when my professors, reach out and not just teach us during the lecture, but also try to engage and build like some kind of level of deeper connection with all of their students. Something that I really appreciate in my professors. But
that's absolutely.
yeah, we touched base upon a lot of different ideas, a lot of different parts of your research. And I really appreciate how in depth that you went into and provided all these examples. But just to end off, since we're running a little short on time, are there any exciting future research papers that you're thinking about working on, or that you're currently working on that you haven't published, that that you would like to give us a sneak peek about?
That's a good one. What is always, and I really don't know how to actually study this, but I would love to figure out a way to study superstitions. Superstitions. What gives rise to superstitions? That when you wake up and you think that, oh Jesus, today's going to be a bad day, and for whatever reason, or you can see, oh my God, a black cat or something.
Right.
All right, and the day you think that the day will go to hell. I haven't figured out, how to study, superstitions, or how exactly they work. But that's something. And plus, I'm coming towards the end of my career here, so if I can get some young and energetic co-authors who are more interested in this. And the second topic that I'm really interested about, and there is some research on this, is that why do people seek out pain? You tell me. Pleasure and pain. I can see people seeking out pleasure, going to a dinner, having fun with your friends, going to exotic vacations. I can see people seeking out. Why do people seek pain? And then you ask me, Chat, that's not possible. It's not logical for people to seek pain. There's some very, very interesting studies that have been done, and that shows the following. Okay, imagine that you're raising money for the refugees in Gaza. Okay, right now there's a huge, refugee problem in Gaza, and politics has made that even more hurtful and tragic. Supposing you're raising money for refugees anywhere, all right, and there are two options. One is a fundraiser picnic, okay, and the other is a 10-mile marathon. People choose the 10-mile marathon over the fundraiser picnic.
Wow.
So they seek out pain. Another example, supposing your best friend is ill, okay, or recovering from a surgery, and you go and visit them. And you're trying to look after them and talking with them, and then suddenly on your way out you notice that they haven't washed their dishes for a few days. So the dishes are piled up in the sink. Okay. There are two options. Nicely arrange them in the dishwasher, start the cycle and leave, or wash them by hand. People choose to wash them by hand.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
and you see what's happening. So your friend is sick, pain, tragedy. All right, the refugees in Gaza are starving, pain, tragedy. You want to be a part of that pain, to be to donate something. You have to sense their pain, and you want to sense their pain. Not you have to, but people feel more. What should I say? More satisfied,
Right.
if they can share that pain. And there's a lot to be done here. But that's the fascinating idea. Okay, why do people seek out pain? Okay, so that's something. Hopefully, before my days are over, research days are over, I hope I can get some good doctoral students or junior faculty to work with me on those. Again, in the end, it all goes down to the same thing. Are these irrational behavior? No, they are not irrational behavior at all. Okay, those are quirky biases, but they make a lot of sense. So to sum it all up, it's trying to make sense of things that people often call nonsense. Yeah, I think that's a good way of summing this up.
Right. And when I hear you mention those things, I don't think that they're completely irrational.
No.
Yeah, like people are not inherently masochistic. They don't like pain.
Right.
Maybe it's like there could be so many different answers to that. It's like whether they have a more strong why, or maybe their skill meets their challenge.
That's true. And in fact, I don't want to cut you short, but if you go back to the friend example, you washing the dishes instead of arranging them neatly in the dishwasher. Often very logical people have looked at this and said, so stupid. Of course, put them in the dishwasher and then go sit by her bed and read her a bedtime story or whatever it is. But that doesn't answer that question. Okay, when you're reading her a story or reading them a story, you're not sharing a pain. That's the issue here. But anyway.
Yeah. Like maybe it's because they feel bad. And I think in research, that's with psychology especially, it's difficult because there's no perfectly black or white.
There are no right or wrong answers. There are no right or wrong answers.
Right.
There are no right or wrong answers. Again, if you can believe in that, it really helps you to become a good researcher, because it always it trains you to question yourself. Okay, knowing that what you think is the right solution to the problem may not be the right solution to the problem. But that's where we are. I am truly blessed that I am able to do research that I love, and more so that I'm able to excite to people like you. That gives me a lot of fulfillment.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to. You touched base upon looking forward to do research on superstitions and why people choose pain. So yeah, when you're ending off your research days, I think that would be a great way to really just a last final project for you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you find when you start that research and publish some of that stuff.
I promise to keep in touch. Jaylin, you'll be here, okay? So, so for the next 4 years, I'll be seeing you.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
But for the audience, for the people that are listening, where could they find you best? Where can they keep posted on your research?
Where can they post it? You see, that's the very bad thing. I really, I never had, a dedicated website or anything where when I write about my research, Yeah, I guess Google my name and see what comes up, what comes up on my paper. I wish I did a little bit better of advertising what I do, but at the same time, and it'll be a good time, as we are nearing the end. One of the things that my parents, God bless their souls, always taught me is that do not be proud. Do not be proud. Okay. And so I am very, very humble in that sense. But anyway, but thank you for including me in this conversation. Okay.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all ours.
But I'm pretty sure they could find at least some of your work on Google Scholar, right? And also
absolutely. I forgot about that altogether. Absolutely. Google Scholar. But remember, Google Scholars will only post work that has been cited.
Oh.
And more or less, my work is always cited, even if by a few people. They will, but that's where we are.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll make sure to leave a link in our bio with your Google Scholar and also your page on Binghamton's site.
Yeah, that's true.
Of course.
And I make sure that the school updates it every year. So that's where you can get a sense of my current research.
Yes.
But that's good.
But yeah, for all our audience listening right now, that's where you can find Professor Chatterjee and all of his exciting work, and hopefully see some of his upcoming exciting research papers as well. But yeah, I think this kind of concludes our episode 103. Thank you so much, Professor Chatterjee, for hopping on and bringing some of your insight to us and having this conversation with us.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine, and I'm sorry I'm such a novice when it comes to technology that I couldn't fix the sound issue. But as we say, all is well that ends well. So I think it's ended well.
Yeah, you have more bigger things to focus on.
I think that's true. That's true. But it was great, folks. It was great, folks. All right. And see you around then.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.